Hey guys, it's Kevin on the Murphy guys. This is my reviewing. This is a movie that I was very much looking forward to based on the director and also the fact that it is the first official Netflix movie of 2018. I was hoping this would be a very well done film, and that is Mike Flanagan's new film, Before I Wake. And what Before It Wakes is essentially about is we center on this couple played by Kate Bosworth and Thomas Jane. They are a recent couple that have, through very unfortunate events, have unfortunately lost their son, and they end up adopting this new boy played by Jacob Tremblay named Cody, and over time they start to realize that Cody may hold some sort of extraordinary powers that might actually give them a way to connect to their son, and that's really all I'm going to say. So Before I Wake in general, I was very much looking forward to this movie. I mean, why shouldn't I? It's directed by Mike Flanagan, who up to this point has given me nothing but amazing stuff. I mean, Ouija Origin of Evil, Hush, Gerald's Game. Three amazing films right there. I haven't seen Oculus, but I heard that one's great as well. But those three I mentioned are some of the best horror movies I think of this entire decade. I think he has really made a name for himself as one of the best horror directors working today. It had an incredible cast. But the thing that did worry me is that it kept getting delayed. It was another Relativity Media film that was supposed to come out, I think, in 2015. It just kept getting put off, and it's gotten released in some other countries, and I really didn't know when this film was going to see the light of day, but thankfully it finally came out on Netflix, and after watching it, was it worth the wait? Well, I'll say this. This is definitely a well-done film. It still is a good film, but it is easily Flanagan's weakest film, especially compared to some of his other efforts. But we're just going to get into it right now, starting off with the cast. And similar to all of Flanagan's other films, that is definitely one of the best parts of this film. The cast here is exceptional. I think, honestly, everyone did do a really good job. But easily the standout of this movie is Kate Bosworth as the character of Jessie. I really did enjoy her work in this movie. She essentially is playing this mother who is going through a lot. She's trying to get over the death of her son, while also kind of trying to comprehend her new adopted son's, his extraordinary powers, and I really did enjoy where they end up going with her character. She is really great in this movie. She has a lot of really great standout scenes, some of which are just very quiet. A lot of her best scenes in this movie don't really have to do with dialogue she conveyed. It's the way that she might have conveyed emotion on her face, and she really did an incredible job with that in this movie. I really did enjoy her character overall. Her acting here was definitely very well done, and like I said, I think she for sure was the standout of this film. And then Thomas Jane as well, I thought also gave a very good performance as the character of Mark, and these two do have really good chemistry. It's kind of fractured because of the fact that they did lose their son and they're very much going through this tragedy, but their chemistry is definitely very well realized here, and I thought he as well did a really great job. Is it as strong as his performance in 1922? No, definitely not. I do think that is still probably the strongest work I've ever seen from him, but this was still an exceptional performance, and I did think he did a pretty good job here. And as far as the rest of the cast goes, let's just talk about them. Jacob Tremblay. Now, I usually really do love Jacob Tremblay. He has really impressed me in both Wonder and Room. He is a fantastic actor. And this is probably the weakest I've seen from him. He's still good, don't get me wrong, he's still good in this movie, but I do think this is probably his weakest performance. Just something about it, it felt very amateur compared to his other performances, the work he's done in his other performances feels light years away than the Jacob Tremblay we see in this film. I don't know if it's because he didn't have as much to work with, but it just kind of felt like he wasn't as strong as he was in his other films. Still a good actor, just not as good as his other works. Annabeth Gish, she's good for the most part. Really, I think everyone did a solid job here. And my problems with this movie definitely are not the acting. I will absolutely say that. So now let's get to the directing and the writing, because here's where we start to have some problems. Now, look, I usually really do love Mike Flanagan's directing. He does a really great job of being able to tell these very horrific and just very traumatic stories, but really give them a lot of emotional resonance and just have a very well-realized tone when it comes to that stuff. This film didn't really feel that way. I think Mike Flanagan, he was trying to channel new ground in this movie. You could very much tell. And this does make sense because this is before Mike Flanagan did Hush and did Ouija. This was before all those films came out. So it does make sense why he's not as able to tackle those specific genres. But to me, what this felt like is he's established himself as a horror director, but he wanted to do something different. He wanted to make this fantasy film, and the fantasy stuff actually does work quite well here. I think the fantasy stuff is honestly really interesting. It goes into some really interesting places, but unfortunately, the horror stuff just feels kind of rinse and repeat. It feels like with stuff we've gotten in other films, it doesn't really have a style to it, and it feels very out of place here. I don't really think the horror stuff honestly needed to be here. It just doesn't really go with the tone of this movie, and I do think that the tones very much did clash there. The film also is trying to be this dark drama, and I do think it worked in that regard, but as a horror movie, it just didn't really come together. So the directing definitely is a bit clunky there. The screenplay, let's get to the screenplay, because I do really like some of the writing in this movie. I really love the main concept of this film. The fact that this boy, he's able to physically make all kinds of dreams and nightmares come to life. I mean, that's actually a really cool idea. I'm sure we've gotten things like that in the past, but nothing really to this effect, and I thought it was actually a really cool idea the way they did that. The way he's able to conjure up all these different sort of demons and creatures is a really cool idea. I really love where they went with that concept. Unfortunately, this movie is just scratching the surface of that. It feels very surface level. It feels very one note, especially compared to Mike Flanagan's other films. To be honest with you, as good as Kate Bosworth and Thomas Jane Moore in this movie, there wasn't really one character that I connected with. In all of Mike Flanagan's other films, there has been that one character, Ouija. I connected with pretty much everyone in that film immensely. That family, I really felt for them. Hush, I really cared about Maddie as a character. She was very well established. You know, the fact that she was, in fact, deaf in that movie was definitely very interesting. Gerald's Game, I very much cared for that character. Here, not really the case with Before I Wake. I can't really think of one character that I very easily connected with. And I think the problem with that is that the film is so focused on telling this story and bringing all these unique elements that it doesn't really zero in on most of the characters. And again, without spoiling anything, it's one of those films where it pretty much ends, at least for most of the characters, in the same place that they started. There isn't really that one moment where you feel like they're having an arc in this movie and they're going through something, because yes, they definitely are going through something quite out of the ordinary, and there are definitely some well done scenes with that. There's some great scenes between Kate Bosworth and this therapist, and those scenes I definitely quite enjoyed, but I don't think there's enough of that. I think we needed more of those scenes in this movie, and we just didn't really get that, unfortunately. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that for some reason they feel they don't need to explain to you, and I feel like they did. There was some stuff that was very unclear to me, especially, like I said, the horror stuff just didn't really make a ton of sense. There is some stuff that is explained toward the end, but it just feels very half-assed, and I didn't feel like they dived into the concept as well as they really could. So again, it's one of those films where the concept is really interesting. There's definitely some really great ideas here, especially in regards to the whole idea of the dreams, and especially the way that this connects to their son. There's definitely some well done scenes, but I didn't really care about one character overall. I definitely will say that here. The cinematography also really doesn't help, because the cinematography here, yeah, you can definitely see why this movie was delayed. The cinematography at some points is honestly awful, especially when it comes to the main creature in this movie. The main creature here looks terrible. It looks like a special effect. It doesn't look real. There's no way you can actually try to persuade me to believe that's actually a real creature. Just everything about it looks like a special effect, and it's laughably bad. The effects here are really bad here. I will say the butterflies and things like that, those do look good, but a lot of the horror creatures and the various things we're following in this film really do not look good at all. So yeah, the creatures here, the CGI, that definitely does not work. The score I thought was really good. Danny Elfman did do the score, and you definitely do get that whimsical feel that you do get from Danny Elfman, but again, it felt like something out of a fantasy film rather than it did a horror film, and unfortunately, this film in the third act does kind of become a horror movie, and it just doesn't really work, because the first two acts are very much this dark fantasy drama, and it didn't really feel like a horror film. So again, this horror stuff, it just kind of comes out of nowhere. It's very out of place, and It didn't really work for me. And also, I will say the editing is a bit of a problem here. Mike Flanagan's other films are significantly longer. They're all kind of close to 2 hours, and this movie is only 97 minutes. And it very much felt like this was a film that could have stretched to a 2-hour runtime, but for some reason was cut short. And I don't know if this was like significantly cut down or whatever, but it very much did feel the way. It felt like there were some things missing in this movie, especially in regards to character development between Mark and Jesse. They could have done a lot more with these two, and unfortunately we just didn't really get that. I really wanted to feel connected, but again, I just didn't get that same connection that I did here. But there are enough scenes for me to overall recommend it. There's enough intriguing stuff in here for me to recommend it. There are some very strong performances from Kate Bosworth, Thomas Jane especially. They both give really great performances. Jacob Tremblay, he's good for the most part, but there are some scenes that are a bit iffy with him. So again, I would overall recommend it, but don't expect it to be on the same level of Mike Flanagan's other works. The stuff I enjoyed, I definitely really enjoyed. There's definitely some stuff that very much did intrigue me. There's some stuff that did keep me hooked in enough, but it is a film that I think we definitely could have gotten a lot more out of. It's very easy to tell why this film was delayed as many times as it was, but overall, I would say if you're a fan of Mike Flanagan, I think you are going to enjoy this one overall, and I am going to give Before I Wake overall a B-. It's definitely Mike Flanagan's weakest film, but it still is very intriguing. It's something that I did overall very much enjoy, but at the end of the day, I did walk away wanting a lot more from it. And over, guys, in my review of Before I Wake, let me know what you guys thought of this movie overall, left your thoughts. And I know there have been tons of people who've had this movie in other countries for years now. I believe it's out on Blu-ray in some places. So if you guys have seen this movie, definitely let me know what you thought. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. But that's it for my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Also, what is your favorite Mike Flanagan film? Definitely would love to hear your thoughts on that. For me, if I were to rank them, I'd probably go Gerald's Game, Ouija, Hush, and then I would put Before I Wake at the very bottom, unfortunately. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you guys in my next video, and I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.